In August this year, riots broke out in Britain's capital. Over 5 days and nights, London was hit by an orgy of looting and arson. The disturbances shook the country and shocked the world, and provoked a tough response from the state. But what drove so many young people into such apparently purposeless violence? 2 months on, People and Power investigates.
I turned on my TV and I saw history repeating. I see the youths on attack and the police was retreating. It's those that understand might call it London riots, but us that overstand know the streets are just speaking.
The riots that erupted across England this August have left the nation stunned at the sheer scale of what happened. Never have looting and arson been so rampant and widespread, and more importantly for many, never has the violence seemed to have so little purpose.
I did nothing to these people, yet they just, they made the choice to destroy my life.
The debate is still going on about what was behind such an explosion of violence. But what has got somewhat lost in the outrage is the fact that, as in both the Brixton and Tottenham riots of 1985, the spark once again was the killing of a black person by the police, and once again in Tottenham.
Mark Duggan was shot just about 100 yards away over there, a street along there. He was in a taxi. The taxi stopped, some kind of altercation with firearms police officers, and he was shot dead.
While a gun was found on Mark Duggan, the Independent Police Complaints Commission admitted that soon afterwards it may have inadvertently given misleading information to journalists.
Now, the information that initially came out was that there had been some kind of a shootout. So Mark was carrying a gun, and the suggestion was that he shot at police. But many of the people here in the community didn't believe that. And as it later turned out, they were right. There were 2 bullets that were fired that day, and both of them came from a police officer's gun.
Such misinformation could only fuel tension in a borough where relations between the police and the black community were at a real low, and in a country where blacks are 26 times more likely to be stopped and searched than whites.
You now have grandfathers from the 60s and 70s, you have fathers from the 80s and 90s, and you have sons and grandsons in the 21st century who are all relaying the same stories about their treatment from the Metropolitan Police. We've been talking about this for 30 years. Yeah, we're still sitting down at the table and we're still talking about it. The definition of madness is to keep doing the same things, or insanity, over and over and over and over and over again.
2 days after Mark Duggan's death on the 6th of August, hundreds marched peacefully to Tottenham Police Station to demand answers. However, that morning, the borough commander had gone on holiday, and after hours of waiting for an officer of sufficient rank to come and talk to them, tension was building. Then a 16-year-old girl approached the police.
Okay, she was saying what she was saying. Policeman took out his baton and hit her. Yeah, which there was no cause for that whatsoever.
It's a girl! It's a girl! Look how he's dealing with her!
When that was seen, yeah, that was the, if you like, that lit the blue touch paper.
Within minutes, a police car had been set alight, and yet no attempt was made to intervene. The Metropolitan Police refused to let us interview any senior officers about the force's perceived failures in handling the riots, so instead we talked to a former chief superintendent at Tottenham.
One of the biggest issues is the issue of officers' health and safety, which has itself almost become a barrier to effective policing. The organisation is geared towards ensuring that risk assessments are done on every occasion. And you get the ridiculous situation where officers can then stand behind static lines and watch a building burn to the ground because there hasn't been an adequate risk assessment.
Once people saw that police car was burning in the road and the police were actually not making any attempts to try and stop the disorder, that's when all chaos started to break loose.
That night, Guardian journalist Paul Lewis began a 5-day odyssey that would take him from riot to riot.
When you talk about these things and you talk about the fires and the people carrying stolen items, you get a sense that it might be scary, but it wasn't. People were enjoying themselves. They were shrieking and happy and excited.
By the time the police did move in, it was too late.
We drove through We had bricks and masonries coming from all around the place. One of the bricks went through the front windscreen, and everybody was very scared in the carrier, but we had to carry on going. We couldn't really stop there because we had the crowd surrounding us.
As the riots spread up Tottenham High Road, it lost its politics and became a different animal, descending into looting and arson and lashing out at anything.
A bit scary actually, to be honest. A lot of smoke, helicopters, shouting, fires, flames. The brothers from the Muslim community, who they stood in front of the shop and told the rioters, you know, this is our shop, it's our community shop, you know, go elsewhere. And the mob went elsewhere. I had sympathy with them because I understood why, but when you start going into criminal damage and exposing people to harm and, you know, arson and stuff like that, then I had no sympathy with that whatsoever.
I thought we've lost the moral high ground. We came out for a righteous reason, but it turned out that people turned their attention away from the police and turned it on to the very community that we're here to improve.
The icon of the Tottenham riots became this listed building, which housed a carpet shop and 26 flats. It has since been demolished, and this is Rosie Pachusa's first time back since she was forced to flee for her life.
You know, I had my slippers on and my pyjamas, and I ran outside, and then I came outside and there was a bloody riot going on out here. They were throwing tyres into carpet ride to fuel the fire. That's just disgusting. They don't care for human life. They don't care about people. All they care about is just getting that free $3.99 polyester rug. Imagine if nobody had alerted us, how we would have died in that bed. We would have died sleeping in that bed. And all my possessions, everything I've worked really hard for, it's all gone. Everything. All my memories are all gone. And just for that rug that's under their feet when they're sat at home, for that cheap, nasty rug they've got under their feet.
While Tottenham burned, social networks like BlackBerry and Twitter were spreading the news that the police had their hands full.
So these were messages saying, go to Tottenham. You know, Tottenham's on fire, there's a riot in Tottenham. And there were people here coming from different parts of London. And that's when we started to see this turn from a local community thing to something that was sucking in people from different areas of North London.
With no police around, opportunists descended on the shopping mall in neighbouring Wood Green and plundered it for hours.
The police sent the message that, well, it was okay to come and loot. And the problem is that today it's on YouTube or it's on Facebook within seconds. And the message that you're sending all around the country is the police aren't going to intervene.
Yet, by the morning, things were calm. London has seen riots before, and there was no reason to think that this one would be different and continue into a second day. By Sunday evening, though, Paul Lewis was getting tweets about the northern suburb of Enfield.
Messages had been swapped around. Lots of the young people in North London, they'd been told to come to this spot. Police were sealing the train station. They were blocking many of the routes in here. But still, lots of people had managed to get in. And all along this row, you could see groups of teenagers gathering around, and there was a kind of expectation. And I think the moment that I realised that this was going to spiral into something far bigger was approaching 9 o'clock at night, and I saw the group of teenagers, and suddenly they moved in unison towards a jewellery store, G. Mantella, down the road. And I was following with my camera, trying to catch what was happening, and they went straight into that shop. The shutters were down, opened the shutters, were in, and then out within about 20 seconds. I mean, we're 6 or 7 miles away from Tottenham here. There was no real reason why it should spread to this place. And the fact that it made me realise that this was something bigger. Now, this could turn into something like contagion.
Indeed, that night, the contagion was already spreading to other areas of London, to Brixton and Walthamstow, Edmonton and Islington. But it was on Monday, the 8th of August, that London truly descended into chaos. In the capital's suddenly volatile atmosphere, it took only a fruitless stop and search in Hackney to ignite anti-police violence. As in Tottenham, anger at the police soon descended into violence against softer targets. Clarence Road became first a battleground and then a free-for-all. One resident decided to stand her ground.
She's working hard to make her business work, and then you lot want to go and burn it up for what? Just to say that you're warring and you're bad man. This is about a man who got shot in Tottenham. This ain't about having fun on the road and busting up the place. Get it real, black people.
Pauline Pierce had no idea she was being filmed, but when her protest hit the internet, it went viral, and she was dubbed the Hackney Heroine.
We're seeing all the burning cars and debris everywhere. So that's when I actually turned around and said to them, hey, you know, this is not the way to conduct yourselves.
If we're fighting for a cause, let's fight for a cause. You lot me the off. I'm ashamed to be a Hackney person. Because we're not all gathering together and fighting for a cause. We're running down Foot Locker and TV Shoe.
There were people on the steps. They were kind of like having a party atmosphere, just chilling, having drinks and such, and people looking out their windows, people loitering. Everybody was doing something.
Hello! Best day ever. No matter what. This is Hackney for you.
You wouldn't believe it was the same road. It really was absolutely disgusting. Is my chef at home? I lose him all the time. How are you? Everybody good? This shop is the shop that you saw on the TV where they were emptying. They absolutely gutted this shop. Not only did they take all of the merchandise, but they then turn around and just ripped it to shreds, you know, and this is the corner shop. You can come and say to Chef, well, Chef, I'm a bit broke this week. Can I have some groceries until Friday? And he will accommodate.
We just closed the shop and we went. And we were on the telly, and we telecasting that our shop was
watching their shop be looted. How scary is that, you know, to sit at home on TV watching your shop getting emptied out and you can't do anything.
Lots of people like this, lots of people came and they helped us.
It was £30,000 raised to help get him back up on his feet and
Raised how?
Yeah.
How was it raised?
Through the community, buckets, just throwing money in buckets, even little children with their 2p's, you know, so every penny counted.
In Hackney is a place I know, you know, it's where I live. And I just thought, you know, these people are burning down cars, some properties in their own estate. You know, so it felt like there was an element of self-destruction there. They were self-harming.
Now this lady was running up and down like the clappers on the night with her little dustpan and brush and her black bin bags.
I'm sorry, I can't stand my place look dirty.
Give me a hug up.
How are you doing, Miss B?
I'm good, baby girl.
Oh, and what happened here was people not knowing what to do with their anger. Because when people get together and they start venting their anger, they want to do something. And seeing they ain't strong enough to push down a tree, they'll do whatever else they can do. It's as simple as that.
Would you say it's to do with the poverty line?
Most definitely.
It was finance, my baby. Finance.
It's all about the finance.
Did you see how many races were out on the road? Everyone's complaining about the pressure and the cuts.
Yes.
This is nothing to do with colour.
Thank you.
This is nothing to do with colour.
People say, who were the rioters? And it's impossible to generalise because in parts of Manchester and Liverpool, they were largely white people. The same in Enfield in North London. Obviously, this is a more black area, so the rioters would have been generally more from the black population, but it was a complete range of people. I think if you wanted a generalisation, you would say they were mostly young, they were mostly men, and yeah, they were mostly from poor areas.
By Monday evening, neither the police nor the media could keep up with the violence breaking out all over London. In Woolwich here, in Peckham, Clapham, Lewisham, Camden, and a score of other places. For many teenagers, the reasons seem obvious.
They're blaming Mark
Duggan, but it wasn't really him. It was just an excuse for them to be like police.
Destructive.
Yeah.
They were trying to show the police that they don't have control over everything and that they can't treat people like that. And that's what they were doing. They were trying to show the police that they had control. They were trying to show the police that they had control and that they could do it as well as everybody else.
For some, it was a mixture between having a laugh and a rebellion. For others, free shopping. But for many, it was terrifying. London's firemen were more stretched than they had been since the Blitz of World War II. And in Croydon, the riots claimed their first fatality, when Trevor Ellis from Brixton was killed by a gunshot to the head in circumstances that are still under investigation. On the other side of London, in leafy middle-class Ealing, a second death was about to occur.
This green, which is normally quiet and a gentle place like it is today, had about 120, 150 kids, mostly black kids, all of them with hoodies on, all running around in a sort of sense of excitement. And I stopped and talked to them, and I just got the feeling they just felt completely disenfranchised. They didn't feel they belonged. I think they felt that everybody was on the make, the politicians, the bankers getting big bonuses. I also got the sense that night that these kids were doing things that would never have done either as an individual or with a small group of 2 or 3 or 4 kids. They just lost any sense of individual responsibility for what they were doing. And that's really quite a scary thing, because mob mentality is a very powerful thing, and people do things that they would not normally do. And I get the feeling, having spoken to some of the kids afterwards, that they were really a bit shocked and taken aback at what they did that night.
One young man already felt things had gone too far.
A tall black kid came running up to me, and then he said, "Look, there's a man down the road there. He needs your help."
68-year-old Richard Mannington Bowes had been attacked while challenging youths who were setting a bin alight.
He'd obviously had quite a serious head injury, and I then spent the next 45 minutes with him, trying to talk to him, trying to get some sort of response from him.
However, Richard Mannington Bowes never regained consciousness and died 3 days later. While no one could have predicted the scale of what happened in London that Monday, the police still seemed massively unprepared and outnumbered, given that they'd already experienced 2 days of violence. Some communities decided they had to defend themselves. When a group of rioters ventured into Dalston, they were chased out of the area by scores of Turkish residents.
You gotta defend yourself, isn't it? If you don't stand up your ground, then what's gonna happen next?
Police don't do nothing. Just they watch our culture as kids is kids. But over here is kids is not kids. 12 years old, midnight, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, in the street. No way. In Turkish culture, no chance.
By the next day, the police on London's streets had trebled to 16,000, and the capital generally fell quiet. But disorder had already spread to other English cities, and it was they that dominated day 4. Manchester, Liverpool, West Bromwich, Bristol, Nottingham, Gloucester and others. Birmingham saw the worst rioting outside London, with even shots being fired at the police. Local Sikh station Sangat TV became the very definition of roving reporters as they broadcast live from their car.
Our main message was that police is not enough. So please come out from your home and protect your businesses. Everywhere is danger, and police doing what they can, but there was not enough.
Sangat's footage made international news when they grabbed a chance to really help the police.
Okay, 3 kids, I must say, actually, teenagers.
Do you want a lift? We're pressed. We can give you a lift. Come on.
Okay, there you go, police officer. We're giving a police officer a lift.
One was very heavy policeman, and he was. I accelerate my car and we went in front of all of them.
Slow down, mate, slow down, please.
Here's some geezers
slow
here.
Down, please.
Here they are. Right. We are helping the community. There you go. And there you go. Absolutely. As you can see as well, this is what we need to do.
Yet that night in Birmingham was to prove the most tragic of the riots, when 3 young Asians protecting local shops were killed by a car that drove into them.
just by seeing the flowers that have been left here, you get a sense of how strongly the community felt at the time and still feels about the death of 3 men who were, defending their communities and defending their properties.
It was young black men that were said to be in the car that killed the 3 Asians, which brought on fears that the riots might escalate to an interracial level.
The worst scene I saw when the families know their sons died, we just stopped. We were thinking that if we broadcast Carry On, maybe some more clashes between the communities. So we stopped the broadcasting. But that scene, I will remember all my life.
The next day, the father of one of the dead made a speech appealing for peace.
I lost my son. Step forward if you want to lose your sons. Otherwise, calm down and go home.
Yet that evening, hundreds of young Muslims and Sikhs gathered at the petrol station where the deaths had taken place.
Some of the kids were talking about, guns. Some of the kids were talking, in racist terms about the people they thought were responsible for the deaths. And I just thought, if this changes tonight, and if it turns into potentially violence between communities, then we might be entering a whole different arena for the whole country, really.
They killed them for free, bro. They've killed them for free.
You'd have done this peacefully, right? We've succeeded. You don't know the ripple effect. It not only takes one person to do something out of turn.
And then gradually the kind of mood changed, and there were a few key guys who stood up and said some, really sensible things from the heart. And I think it convinced people.
Make sure you're not marching in the name of the 3 brothers that died, because if you're going to march here in their name and you're rioting here, it's a disgrace.
Man, no march. That's it. Go home, brush. Thanks for coming.
Let's go home, man.
This was just young men. The same type of demographic of young men, many of them, children of immigrants, many of them probably quite poor, living in deprived parts of Birmingham. So the same kind of demographic that people were blaming for the riots elsewhere. And their conclusion was they had to control themselves. And amazingly, they did it. It's probably the final moment in the England riots. If it started in Tottenham with a protest against a guy who'd been shot by police, then it kind of ended here in Birmingham with a protest that didn't happen.
That night, the riots burnt themselves out across the country. To fend off sudden doubts about whether next year's Olympics would be safe in British hands, the government put on a show of force. Within days, over 2,000 people had been arrested, although the police estimated that as many as 15,000 to 30,000 were involved. Yet when the courts started to hand down sentences, some of them smacked more of vengeance than justice.
A young boy stole 2 bottles of water 4 months. A MP done £7,000 worth of expenses and he got the same 4 months.
I don't think that's fair at all. Mum,
I know it's not
Jamal,
fair.
he got taken away for 2 years for smashing a bottle on the floor in anger because he was pushed by a policeman. And he was nowhere near the policeman. He was here, the policeman were all the way down there. And he was like, don't believe this man, smash! Later on, they came to his house. He's gone for 2 years.
2 years for
2 years for smashing a bottle at his own feet.
There was a knee-jerk reaction. The fact is that these people broke the law. If they are caught and found guilty, then they should pay the penalty. But it should not be an excessive penalty, because in the end that will just widen the gulf between these kids and the rest of society. It's not going to solve anything.
Certainly, gut outrage has dominated much reaction to the riots. For some, the shock of violence negates the need to examine its roots.
It's time we heard a little bit less about the sociological justifications for what is, in my view, nothing less than wanton criminality.
This will do little to bridge the rift between a government which has been cutting youth and community services and those most affected by them.
So you're saying the problem is half of us ain't ever seen our dad? We all want to do right, but we're failed by this system. Because these streets will turn a good guy bad. Because you forget your principles when you're trying to survive. I've seen these streets turn a sane guy mad.
Few try to justify the looting, arson and attacks on innocent people that went on in the England riots. But if the authorities don't try to understand and engage with the various issues behind the violence, this may be a pot that boils over again.